Sometimes I think to broke the relationship because we're not getting any good communication between us. So what's the good thing? Because I love you and you love me, that's it.
You don't get to say that I'm not a real wife and act like I'm the goddamn problem.
You see how she get it? That's why I drive to Virginia.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sometimes I think to broke the relationship because we're not getting any good communication between us. So what's the good thing? Because I love you and you love me, that's it.
When I said to Rebecca I want a real wife, I don't mean Rebecca she's a bad wife. I just want her to give me time to be not busy, but she not wanna. If I leave or we leave and nothing get changed in our relationship with the therapy, and maybe you're gonna broke up.
Okay. Well, no.
I'm gonna quit my job.
No,
Sit on my ass
What are you
and-
gonna rich?
and take care of him.
No.
Zied has finally said the one thing Rebecca may not be able to shout past. Love might not be enough anymore. And coming from Zied, that matters. This is a man who stayed through long-distance stress, cultural clashes, jealousy, accusations, and years of arguments that would have ended plenty of marriages. Rebecca and Zied have always found their way back to each other. But this time, the real threat is not another person. It is not distance. It is not even one explosive fight. The real threat is that these two may no longer know how to speak without hurting each other. And somehow, the entire crisis came down to 3 words. A real wife. Rebecca heard those words as a rejection of everything she has done. She heard Zied saying she had failed as a partner. She heard judgment, disrespect, and possibly a demand that she become the kind of traditional wife he has always wanted. Zied later said he meant something different. He said he wanted attention. He wanted quality time. He wanted to feel married again instead of feeling like 2 disconnected people sharing the same life on paper. But that explanation came after the damage was done. Zied chose the worst possible words. Rebecca gave him almost no room to recover from them. And that is why this fight is much deeper than one awkward sentence. Is Zied truly asking for emotional connection? Or did those words expose expectations he has never fully admitted? Is Rebecca standing up against disrespect? Or has she become so reactive that Zied cannot safely express anything uncomfortable? And while Rebecca is working exhausting shifts, what exactly is Zied offering besides another complaint about what she is not giving him? Public signs after filming suggest the marriage may have survived. But surviving one more crisis does not mean they solved it. Rebecca and Zied may not be heading toward a sudden breakup. They may be heading right back into the same cycle that has kept them together and miserable at the same time. The most revealing part of the scene was not simply that Zied said real wife. It was how quickly the conversation became impossible. Those words were always going to land badly. Even with perfect English, telling your spouse you want a real wife does not sound like a loving request for more time together. It sounds like a verdict. It sounds like Rebecca is not merely doing something wrong. It sounds like Rebecca herself is wrong. That distinction matters. If Zied had said, I miss you, Rebecca might have heard loneliness. If he had said, I want us to spend more time together, she might have heard a request. But real wife sounds like a judgment about her entire identity inside the marriage. Suddenly, Rebecca is not discussing one behavior. She is being asked to defend whether she qualifies as a wife at all. So her anger did not appear out of nowhere. She was already vulnerable. She was surrounded by therapists, other cast members, and cameras. Then her own husband used a phrase that sounded humiliating and deeply personal. In Rebecca's mind, Zied was not saying, I feel alone. He was saying, you are not good enough. That explains her reaction, but it does not make the reaction productive. The moment Rebecca felt attacked, she went into full defense mode. Her voice rose. She challenged Zied. She walked away before the conversation could reach the meaning underneath his words. Her anger gave her control over a moment in which she felt embarrassed. But it also guaranteed that she would leave without knowing whether Zied had expressed himself badly, revealed something controlling, or attempted to communicate a real emotional need. And this is where their relationship becomes so frustrating. Rebecca says she needs Zied to communicate clearly. But when his first attempt is clumsy or offensive, she often does not give him time to find clearer language. Zied says he wants Rebecca to listen. But he keeps beginning serious conversations with phrases so loaded that almost anyone would become defensive. Both of them expect the other person to do the hardest part. Zied wants Rebecca to remain calm while he searches for the right English words. Rebecca wants Zied to express a complicated emotional problem perfectly before she agrees to hear him out. Neither expectation is realistic, and neither person seems willing to adjust first. There is also a clear communication imbalance between them. Rebecca speaks faster. She argues faster. She can express anger, sarcasm, and accusation with far more precision. Zied often needs extra time to translate what he is thinking into English. During a calm conversation, that difference might be manageable. During a fight, it changes the balance of power. Rebecca can ask 3 questions before Zied has finished answering the first. She can react to one word while he is still trying to build the full thought. By the time he finds a sentence he actually wanted, she may already be emotionally done. That does not mean Rebecca should ignore hurtful language, because English is not his first language. It does mean she has to decide whether her goal is to punish the bad wording or understand the message behind it, because she cannot do both at the same time. But Zied is not powerless here either. He may struggle with English, but he understands that words connected to marriage, loyalty, respect, and gender roles are highly sensitive in this relationship. Whether he intends it or not, those phrases can instantly force Rebecca into a position where she has to defend her value. So this is not a simple story where Rebecca holds all the power because she speaks better English. Zied can introduce an expectation in vague language, then later explain it in a much softer way once Rebecca is no longer present. That is exactly what happened when he spoke to the therapist. Away from Rebecca, his complaint suddenly became much clearer. He said she works long hours. When she comes home, she spends time on her phone. They eat different food. They are not sleeping in the same bed. He feels that the closeness between them has disappeared. That explanation sounds very different from, "I want a real wife." It does not sound like a man demanding a servant. It sounds like a husband who feels lonely. And loneliness inside a marriage can be worse than being physically alone. When your partner is sitting beside you but emotionally unavailable, every small habit begins to feel like proof that the relationship is dying. Different meals are no longer just different preferences. They become evidence that you no longer share daily life. Separate beds are no longer only about sleep. They become evidence that affection has disappeared. Phone use is no longer just distraction. It becomes evidence that everyone else can access your partner while you cannot. From Zied's perspective, he may feel like he changed his entire life for a marriage that now exists mostly as a title. That feeling deserves to be taken seriously. But Rebecca's reality deserves equal attention. She says she is working extremely long shifts. If she is working those hours because the household needs the money, that changes the entire argument. It is easy for Zied to say, "Spend more time with me." It is much harder to explain which bills will not be paid when those hours disappear. And this is where the conversation needed to become practical. Instead of debating whether Rebecca qualifies as a real wife, they should have discussed why their life is structured this way. Why is Rebecca working so much? Is it temporary? Or is this their normal financial reality? What income is coming into the household? What responsibilities is Zied handling? Could Rebecca reduce her hours if Zied increased his contribution? Could he take on more at home? Could they protect 1 or 2 evenings every week for each other? Those questions can lead to a plan. Are you a real wife? Cannot. That phrase takes a problem that might be solved through scheduling, money, and shared responsibility, then turns it into a moral judgment about Rebecca. And once Rebecca feels morally judged, she stops hearing the practical complaint. But Rebecca also makes the conflict bigger than it needs to be. Zied says he wants more attention, and she immediately turns it into, "Fine, I will quit my job." That may be sarcasm, but it reveals something important. She does not trust his request. She does not hear, "Can we find balance?" She hears, "Give up your independence and organize your entire life around me." That tells us their disagreement has been building far longer than this one scene. Rebecca may believe that behind Zied's request for quality time is a traditional expectation he is unwilling to state directly. She may fear that reducing her work hours will not satisfy him. It will only create the next demand. Zied may genuinely believe that is unfair. He may honestly want companionship, not control. But cultural and religious expectations have always been part of their relationship. Those differences do not automatically make Zied controlling. They also do not automatically make Rebecca disrespectful. They simply mean that neither person hears a sentence without years of history attached to it. When Zied says wife, Rebecca may hear every past argument about what a wife should do. When Rebecca says work, Zied may hear another reason he will always rank below her job, her phone, and everything else demanding her attention. That is why they are not really fighting over one evening together. They are fighting over what marriage is supposed to mean. Rebecca seems to define being a good wife through loyalty, financial contribution, sacrifice, and the fact that she has remained committed through difficult years. Zied seems to define marriage through shared time, emotional attention, physical closeness, and a daily feeling of partnership. Neither definition is completely unreasonable. The problem is that each person behaves as though their definition should automatically satisfy the other. Rebecca may be thinking, I am exhausting myself to support this household. How dare you question my commitment? Zied may be thinking, I barely experience a marriage with you anymore. How is earning money supposed to replace a relationship? That is the pain underneath the shouting. Rebecca feels unappreciated for everything she provides. Zied feels unwanted despite everything she provides. But neither of them says that plainly. Rebecca does not say, I am afraid you do not see how much I sacrifice. She gets angry and accuses Zied of making her the problem. Zied does not say, I am afraid you no longer enjoy being married to me. He says he wants a real wife. Both of them take a vulnerable fear and wrap it inside criticism. Then they react to the criticism instead of addressing the fear. That is why the same argument keeps growing. They are not fighting about food, a phone, or a work schedule. They are fighting against the possibility that the other person no longer values them. And then Shekinah enters the situation without even needing to enter the conversation directly. Rebecca overhears her criticizing the way she treats Zied. That immediately adds a second layer of humiliation. Rebecca already feels judged by her husband. Now she hears another woman discussing her marriage from the next tent. At that point, she is no longer only hurt. She feels surrounded. But Shekinah did not create this problem. She did not create the separate beds. She did not create Rebecca's schedule. She did not create Zied's loneliness or the resentment between them. She simply touched a wound that was already wide open. And Rebecca's response shows how easily outside opinions can redirect her emotions. Instead of returning to Zied and figuring out what he meant, she now has to process embarrassment, anger toward Shekinah, and the fear that everyone around the campfire sees her as a terrible wife. Once that happens, the argument becomes a performance. The goal is no longer understanding. The goal becomes proving who is right in front of everyone else. Rebecca seeks out someone who will validate that Zied's words were offensive. Zied explains himself to the therapist in a calmer, more understandable way than he explained himself to Rebecca. Both of them are clearer when speaking about each other than when speaking to each other. And that may be the biggest warning sign of all. A marriage cannot stay healthy when both partners need a therapist, friend, cast member, or private interview to say what they actually feel. At some point, the honest version of the conversation has to happen between the two people in the marriage. The online reaction to this fight has been divided, and honestly, that division makes sense. Some fans feel Zied clearly meant that he wanted Rebecca to be a more present partner. They believe the phrase sounded worse because English is not his first language, and they think Rebecca should have given him more time to explain. Many viewers are saying Rebecca's shouting makes serious communication almost impossible. From their perspective, Zied has learned that he can either stay quiet or risk another explosion. But another section of the audience does not believe the language barrier explains everything. Those viewers think Real Wife revealed a deeper traditional expectation. They believe Zied wants Rebecca to work less, focus more on him, and fit a role he is not honestly defined. Other fans strongly sympathize with Rebecca because of the long work shifts. They question why so much pressure is placed on Rebecca to provide more time when there is not enough discussion about what Zied will change in return. And then there are viewers who think the entire argument may have been exaggerated because Rebecca and Zied continued presenting themselves publicly as a couple after filming. That public image is relevant, but it does not answer the real question. A couple can post an anniversary message and still be deeply unhappy. They can remain legally married while emotionally disconnected. They can love each other while repeating the same destructive argument for years. Public survival does not prove private healing. That is why this debate should not become a simple question of whether viewers like Rebecca or Zied more. The real issue is whether this was a translation problem or a values problem. A translation problem can be improved. Zied can avoid loaded phrases, slow down, and begin with a feeling instead of the judgment. He can say, I miss you, instead of you are not a real wife. Rebecca can ask one clarifying question before reacting to the worst possible meaning. She can say, are you saying I am a bad wife, or are you saying you want more time with me? That would still be difficult, but at least they would be discussing the same issue. A values problem is much harder. If Zied truly wants a more traditional marriage and Rebecca sees her independence as non-negotiable, better communication will not erase the disagreement. It will only expose it more clearly. And sometimes that is what therapy reveals. Therapy does not always save a relationship. Sometimes it simply helps two people understand that they want different lives. The pattern between Rebecca and Zied suggests that they have avoided reaching that level of honesty for a long time. Zied feels disconnected, but he does not seem to raise the problem while it is still small. He holds it in. The resentment grows. Then he uses a statement strong enough to force a reaction. Rebecca hears an attack and immediately defends herself. Zied withdraws. Once Rebecca is gone, he explains the issue more clearly to somebody else. Rebecca then explains to another person why Zied is wrong. Both receive separate validation. Neither has to remain in the discomfort of speaking directly to the other. Eventually, they calm down. They remember that they love each other. They reconnect. And the original issue remains exactly where they left it. That cycle can look like resilience. They survive every fight, so they tell themselves the relationship must be strong. But surviving a crisis is not the same as resolving it. In fact, every incomplete reconciliation may make the pattern harder to break. Zied learns that he does not need to become more direct because Rebecca eventually calms down and comes back. Rebecca learns that she does not have to listen through an uncomfortable explanation because Zied eventually returns without finishing it. The marriage continues. The resentment continues with it. Then the next argument carries the emotional weight of every unresolved argument before it. A discussion about work turns into, "You never choose me." A disagreement about household responsibility becomes, "You do not respect what I contribute." A language mistake becomes, "You always insult me." A request for quality time becomes, "You are trying to control me." A night in a separate bed becomes evidence that the marriage is already gone. This is how couples end up having the same fight in 20 different forms. The topic changes. The wound does not. And Zied may understand that better than anyone when he questions whether love is enough. That might be one of the most honest things he has said during this entire retreat. Reality television loves the idea that love conquers everything. Couples say, "But we love each other," as though love erases incompatible values, resentment, disrespect, and years of poor communication. It does not. Love does not create a fair budget. Love does not divide household responsibilities. Love does not schedule quality time. Love does not repair trust without changed behavior. Love does not make someone listen when they're already preparing their next defense. Love gives people a reason to try. It does not do the work for them. Rebecca and Zied appear to have love. What they do not appear to have is a dependable way to solve a problem without turning it into a threat against the entire marriage. A healthier version of this conversation would have been almost boring. And that would have been a good thing. Zied could have said, "I miss you. I feel alone when we do not eat together or sleep in the same room. Can we protect 2 nights every week for each other?" Rebecca could have answered, "I understand that you feel lonely, but I am exhausted and worried about money. What can we both change, so I do not have to carry these hours alone?" Then the conversation could have moved toward an actual plan. Maybe they change schedules. Maybe Zied takes on more financial responsibility. Maybe Rebecca sets limits on phone use. Maybe they agree to eat together twice a week even if they eat different meals. Those changes are small, measurable, and realistic. Instead, Zied turned loneliness into a judgment. Rebecca turned hurt into an explosion. And once again, the practical problem disappeared beneath the emotional damage. The upcoming communication challenge may give them a temporary breakthrough because structured activities remove some of the chaos from their normal arguments. There will be a clear goal. There will be instructions. Each person will know what the other needs in that exact moment. Rebecca may have to slow down. Zied may have to speak clearly and directly. They may succeed. They may laugh. They may even feel close again. But one successful challenge cannot solve the structure of their everyday life.